right, welcome back to One True Podcast, and with me, as always, is my favorite runner of marathons, Zach Smith. Also, we are
completer of
joined,
marathons.
huh?
Completer of marathons.
Completer of marathons. In under 5 hours, which was his goal, so very cool. And then also joined by my favorite climber of mountains, hiker of trails, the one, the only John Werner. Johnny, thanks for hopping on.
Oh, great to be here.
Yeah, John actually pitched in this past week, familiar place, as Zach did run the Chicago Marathon. So John was our beat writer for the week for Baylor football, for that game. And clearly it's not the beat writer's fault. Actually, Zach picked a pretty good game to miss, honestly.
Oh, man.
So Baylor's weird season, guys, did take a downturn in a 30-14 home loss to those Texas Tech Red Raiders. It's kind of tough to say, to me, what was most troubling for the Bears. I don't know if it was the non-existent rushing game. They had 17 yards on the ground. The perpetually perplexing play calling. That's a little bit of alliteration there. And, or the lack of playmaking by the defense, which they didn't play very well either. So is there still hope for a turnaround for this team? And what would that even look like, maybe from a record standpoint? What do you think, Zach?
Yeah, I think there absolutely is. I am the eternal optimist here. I'll continue that trend. I think there's an okay chance that, you can go 6-6 and make a bowl game. You need to go 4-2 in the last 6 to do that. And I think the next 3 are pretty favorable at Cincinnati, home against Iowa State, and home against a very struggling Houston team. So, I feel like every time I'm asked that question, it's kind of like kicking the can down the road. Like, we'll see. Maybe they can turn a corner. We thought that fourth quarter against UCF was going to do that. And then Texas Tech happened. But, I think there is hope. I think it's kind of foolish to not think there is a path forward, because obviously that fourth quarter showed that they have it in them. But I guess the rest of Big 12 play has not. I think they've scored, 6 points against Texas, 10 points against UCF, other than that fourth quarter, and then 14 against Texas Tech. That's not going to win a lot of Big 12 games. So my long answer is yes, there is hope, but we've still got to kind of see it be consistent.
Absolutely. So, John, what do you think?
Well, I think Baylor is playing its most favorable schedule I've ever seen.
Right.
Now, they haven't done much with it so far, but when you look, they don't play Oklahoma, clearly the best team in the conference. And it's kind of weird saying this. In most odd-numbered years, they would be going to Kansas. And Kansas is a pretty good football team this year. So they don't play them either. And I agree with Zach. The next 3 games are really pivotal. I think they're all winnable. Cincinnati on the road, Iowa State and Houston at home. I think they probably need to sweep those 3, because I think the schedule gets at least a little bit tougher the last 3 games. Let's see, at K-State and TCU, and then West Virginia at home. I think those can all be pretty tough. Now, I don't know about West Virginia. They've been kind of a surprise team, and Baylor usually just stomps them here. But this is an unusual year as far as just Baylor being very, a really good team. But I think they still have a shot.
Yeah, Zach mentioned a key word there, and I think that's consistent. They have not been consistent. We have seen flashes where they look, like a football team, like a pretty decent football team. Obviously, that fourth quarter against UCF was something to behold. But those flashes have been few and far between, I think. And to me, the most troubling signs for Baylor are on offense. I mean, they just they get in these ruts where they struggle to run the ball, or they struggle to pass protect. And I just thought, to me, it was the low water mark for the offensive line. They did not pass protect well. They did not run block well. There was no lanes to run through. I think Baylor has pretty good running backs. Like, to me, talent-wise, Baylor and Tech are not that, dissimilar. And yet they made Tech look like world beaters. So it's confusing, and I know a lot of Baylor fans are frustrated. It's kind of hard to fathom that this Baylor program, I wouldn't say this Baylor team, because it's obviously a different team. A lot of those guys are gone, but they were Big 12 champions, Sugar Bowl winners just 2 seasons ago. So it's probably time to at least start addressing the elephant in the room. I've seen his name pop up on hot seat lists, and we're talking about Dave Aranda. He's in his 4th year leading the Bears, and is in the midst of what is shaping up to be, again, unless it all turns, his 3rd losing record out of those 4 years. Now, last year was 6-7. They got to a losing record in the last game by losing the bowl game. But how hot do you think Dave Aranda's seat is? And, do you think Mack Rhoades makes a coaching change this offseason? Either one of you.
Yeah, I guess I'll go ahead and answer. I think it's moderately hot, but I think Mack Rhoades is going to do everything to keep Coach Aranda. I mean, that was his guy. He hired him. He did win the Big 12 title 2 years ago. I think probably, at least, I don't think Jeff Grimes is looking too good about returning right now. Although that's a pretty bad trend, if you fire Grimes. That would be 3 of the 4 years that Dave has been here, he's fired a coordinator. I mean, that's not good at all. And the only time they didn't fire one was after they won the Big 12 title. I thought, like, the Fedora firing was justifiable. They were terrible in 2020 on offense. Ron Roberts, I still think that's a bit of a head scratcher. Apparently, he and some of the players just didn't get along well. But they were still okay on defense last year. They were great 2 years ago. That one I still kind of question. But I think Jeff Grimes' job is probably on the line unless they just get a whole lot better.
Zach?
Yeah, I agree. I think unless they go, 0-6 to end the year, Aranda's fairly safe. I think maybe next year at media days we're talking, is this the year that Aranda is finally canned? But I agree. I think Jeff Grimes, his seat is pretty blazing at the moment. And, Mack Rhoades, he had a pretty enlightening interview on Smoke Show on Sikkim 365 yesterday, and he was talking about using the bye week and talking to Aranda about some changes and tweaks to the offense and kind of making some changes based on the personnel they had. And I don't think I've ever heard an athletic director get that in the weeds, especially on offense, right? And kind of the specific changes that he wanted to see. He didn't go as far as saying like he's going to be the one calling plays, but it was pretty enlightening to see how involved Mack was in kind of almost begging Aranda to make some changes, at least in personnel and scheme stuff offensively. So that was very interesting. So yeah, I think Aranda is pretty safe, but I agree with John. Jeff Grimes is kind of coaching for his job over the last half of the season.
Yeah, I'll echo what you guys said. I have talked to Mack Rhoades, and I'm not going to share what that conversation was like just because it was off the record. But I agree with your y'all's assessment that I personally don't think Mack Rhoades wants to fire Dave Aranda. I mean, he wants him to succeed. Well, what athletic director doesn't want their guy to succeed? But I think he personally likes Dave. I think he believes in Dave. The Jeff Grimes thing, and as John said, sure, it's a bad trend to fire a coordinator pretty much every year, at least one of them. And at the same time, I don't think you can sell Jeff Grimes coming back to the fan base right now. I mean, they're kind of a bloodthirsty crowd. They need a head. They need a sacrificial lamb. Because they're a mess on offense. I mean, and it's puzzling. John, when he came in, he talked a lot about having this reliable, violent offense, RVO.
RVO.
Yeah. And they're not reliable. They're not really that violent right now. I mean, they're not resembling that. So, we don't like to talk about it, but we kind of have to talk about it. So, so let's move on just to the Big 12. So Oklahoma and Texas delivered a Red River battle for the ages on Saturday. Great game. Sooners survived 34-30 in that one. We've talked a lot about the Longhorns this year, and obviously, deservingly so. They were highly ranked. But let's talk about Brent Venables and OU. They're sitting there now, at 6-0. Any chance that this team can run the table and be undefeated going into the Big 12 championship game?
I'll take this one. I think that I've been the Texas supporter on this podcast all year, and I still think that they're gonna be, if the Big 12 has a representative in the playoff, I still think it's going to be Texas.
Interesting.
I think that Oklahoma is very good, and I think Saturday's win showed that. I think Dylan Gabriel is a very, very good college quarterback, but I think that their schedule coming up, they have UCF. I think they have a bye week this week, and then UCF next week. But then after that, they're at Kansas, at Oklahoma State for the last Bedlam, and then home against a much improved West Virginia team, and then at BYU, where crazy things can happen in Provo. So I think they lose at least one of those games, and then probably going to meet Texas in the Big 12 title game, where I don't think you can beat Texas twice. So, I think there's certainly a chance that they could, but I'm not betting on it.
Johnny?
Yeah, I agree with Zach. Just looking at their schedule, they should beat UCF at home. I would still take them at Kansas, even though Kansas is obviously pretty good. Oklahoma State, I mean, they go to Stillwater, but I mean, they've had Oklahoma State's number forever. Mm-hmm. So they usually find a way to win those games. And the last three, hosting West Virginia, at BYU, hosting TCU, I give them a pretty good shot to win all three of those games. But yeah, if they get Texas again in the Big 12 championship game, that game could go the other way. That was a great game, like you mentioned. I mean, it was just fantastic. Especially the way Dylan Gabriel marched Oklahoma down the field that last drive with no timeouts and scoring. I'd say it's unlikely they're going to make the playoff, but I think there's there's at least a chance.
So nobody goes through a season anymore undefeated in the Big 12. I mean, it's been a while since we've seen that happen. There's too much parity in college football, I think, for somebody. OU will slip up in there at some point. They'll probably be more like 11-1 going into the Big 12 championship game, which is not bad. I agree that I think Texas could win round 2. I'm not counting the Sooners out. I mean, I've always said that Texas is overrated. just in recent years. And this Texas team does look different. I mean, you could tell that, they've got talent at all the right positions. That said, I mean, finish it off, win a big game, Texas. I mean, prove it to me.
Man up.
Man up. There you go. Were they out eating deep fried Snickers? I don't know. But I mean, obviously OU is very good. And I think where they have made, light years of improvement is on defense. And I give Brent Venables credit for that. I mean, that's his side of the ball, so to speak. I mean, that's kind of where he made his name. And they needed to, because OU's defense was not good last year. And so they've made major strides in that area. And you have to think about it. Texas still scored 30 points, but OU made enough plays to win. So good for the Sooners. I wrote a column where that week of the Baylor Texas game where I said, I know everybody hates Texas, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to personally miss them in the Big 12. I don't know that I'm going to miss OU just because I hate that school song. I hate that fight song. It's in my brain, freaking Boomer Sooner. I went to college up there. I was surrounded by Sooner fans. So go away, OU. Go away.
You're saying you don't like hearing Boomer Sooner after every first down?
Oh my gosh. It's like an earworm, I mean, I've got it in my head right now and it's driving me crazy. So anyway.
It's funny, Brice. Karen, a few years ago, she went to one of those Baylor OU games, and that just annoyed the heck out of her too. Like every first down, hearing that.
Yes. Karen and I are on the same page, and you have sat next to me as that song has been going on, where I've been sitting there going, "Screw the Sooner, screw the Sooner."
Yeah, nice rendition.
Yes, I've been known to come up with my own words to stuff.
Edgy.
So guys, we're basically at the midpoint of the season. I've seen a few mid-season All-America teams out there, different things like that. Let's hand out some mid-season Big 12 awards. If you were, coming up with your own team here, who would your picks be for Big 12 Coach of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year? Go.
Well, I'd probably go with an OU sweep at this point. Brent Venables, Coach of the Year. Dylan Gabriel, I think he's pretty clearly the Offensive Player of the Year so far. And I'd probably go with their linebacker, Danny Stutzman, as defensive player. He leads the league in tackles, second in tackles for loss. He's got 10 and a half right now. But, I would definitely put Lance Leopold in the running. I mean, he's done a pretty remarkable job at Kansas. And, if they beat OU, he's probably the leader for Coach of the Year. But, I'd go with all Oklahoma right now.
Zach?
I agree, but I came prepared. I think that I like you said, halfway point. I know that there's still plenty to go, but for Coach of the Year, I give Neil Brown at West Virginia lots of credit. I think a lot of people, including myself, kind of counted out the Mountaineers and picked them to finish way down in the Big 12 standings.
So you stole my answer there, and that's okay. If Zach, you'll remember at Big 12 Media Days, you and I kind of looked at each other like, because Neil Brown got up there and he was kind of ticked that they got picked last in the Big 12, and he sort of took it personal, and everybody was kind of like, what, you're West Virginia, do something, I mean, what do you want? And again, like you said, they've been, to me, the surprise of the league. He would actually be my choice right now, just because I think OU we expected to be good, but nobody expected West Virginia to be good.
And I mean, I know they lost the opener to Penn State, but that was a lot closer. I think Penn State's really good, and then they've run off 4 in a row ever since. So, I I totally agree. And then offensive player of the year, I have to shout out Jonathan Brooks, the Texas running back. I think he's second in the nation in rushing. Ironically, Baylor is faced off against 3 of the top 6 top running backs in the nation. I don't know what that says about, just an interesting stat. And then defensive player of the year, I got to shout out Beanie Bishop, DB from West Virginia. Top 20 in the conference in tackles and 7 pass breakups, 2 interceptions. So, lots of West Virginia love over here.
Okay. Take me home, country road. So I agree. Dylan Gabriel feels like the right choice as offensive player of the year. I've heard now that he's, being talked about as a potential Heisman guy. That Heisman thing kind of ebbs and flows. So, he'll have to keep it up. He'll probably have to win some more big games to win it. But certainly he's having a great year, very talented quarterback. I also agree that Jonathan Brooks certainly deserves a shout out. I think there were at least, wouldn't you say, Zach, some questions, what Texas's running game would look like minus Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson.
Yeah.
Those were 2 really, really talented dudes. And Jonathan Brooks has picked up the slack and just run with it. When you mentioned that Baylor has played how many?
3 of the top 6.
3 of the top 6.
Brooks, Ishmael Mahdi from Texas State, Taj Brooks from Texas Tech, and Jonathan Brooks from Texas.
Well, here's what I would also say about that. It sometimes doesn't hurt playing Baylor's defense.
Oh, yeah, right.
They made Taj Brooks, no offense to Taj Brooks, but they made him look all world. He had 170 yards rushing. It was a career high, but it was also his 4th straight 100-yard game. The kid's good. But yeah, you can pad your stats against Baylor right now.
Right. Yeah.
As far as a coach of the year, I mentioned Neil Brown. Who else I got to mention? Oh, defensive player. So I like y'all's guys that you mentioned, but another one I will throw in there, and this is me, the quote unquote Longhorn hater, but Byron Murphy. To me, Texas's D line. If you want to pick out one unit, in the conference that would just be like the most dominant unit. I feel like Texas's D line is really, really, really good. Now, again, maybe they weren't quite as good as they needed to be against OU, but Byron Murphy is a stud. Sometimes it's hard for those D linemen to win that award just because stats wise, they don't always rack up just the most huge stats. Now, John, you and I remember when Andrew Billings won Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year as a D tackle. Yeah. And it does help if you have, if Byron Murphy were to get like some highlight type plays or something. I'll never forget Andrew Billings running a running back. It was against Texas, wasn't it?
I think it was Kansas.
Okay. I remember a play he made against Texas where he chased a running back down from like about 20 yards away from behind.
Yeah, I remember against Kansas, I think it was like 30 or 40 yards.
It was a heck of a play. And it was pretty cool. Andrew Billings was the Baylor legend of the game this past week. So
yeah,
fresh in my
great player.
Yeah, great player. Now playing for the Chicago Bears, a Waco High product. So there you go. But yeah, Byron Murphy, I think, certainly would be, deserving of that award, just like a couple of those other guys you mentioned. Stutzman's probably the odds-on favorite right now, but yeah. And I will also say, defensive newcomer. I would think Caden Jenkins
has
a shot.
He's good.
Man,
really good.
He is really good. that Baylor needs a few more Caden Jenkins right now, because that guy, he does make plays and has had just some really big moments already this season. In looking through the Big 12 stats while I was just sort of putting this together, I thought it was funny. Do you know who, Zach, who leads the conference in fumble recoveries?
Garrison Grimes, maybe?
Garrison Grimes.
Really?
Yeah. No, yeah, it was 2 in one game, wasn't it, Zach?
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
both in Texas punt recoveries.
Punt recoveries. But yeah, 2 fumble recoveries right now leads the conference. We'll see if he's able to keep that up because he's not playing anymore.
Right.
Unfortunately, Garrison suffered an ACL injury that cost him his season. But he was a highlight there for a while, one of the bright spots. I shouldn't even say this, but maybe Baylor fans are saying, can we keep Garrison Grimes and then get rid of the other guys? Ouch. Ouch. Well, Johnny, it's been fun having you back in the mix after
I appreciate it, man.
After your 6 weeks away in the mountains. We mentioned that we were wondering if you were going to be like Moses coming down from the mountains with some tablets.
It's good to get cell phone reception again.
Yeah, absolutely. And Zach's back for the rest of the season. No more marathons this season. So we'll see how it all turns out. 6 games to go. As y'all said, the schedule does break. It's not terrible for Baylor, but I also feel like the Texas Tech game was one they on paper should be in. So yeah,
you got to at least win a home game against a Power 5 school.
Yes, that would be good,
right?
Especially when you have 8 home games on the season. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. Next week I'm sure we'll be back and we'll be talking to probably somebody from Cincinnati, and Zach will be preparing to eat some Skyline chili.
Can't wait.
Nice.
Can't wait.
Yeah, there you go.
Sounds good.
All right, see you guys. Thanks.